Ice and Iron for Kings of War Vanguard basically updates the original rulebook and brings it in line with 3rd edition Kings of War. So you have a couple of updated unit lists and their updated unit points and allocations and some different ability changes. So this contains not the core rules, so you would still need the original book for the core rules, but there's a lot more background and fluff on the units that are in there, and it kind of brings you up to speed with what's going on in the campaign settings in sort of the Kings of War world, and how the Forces of the Abyss are kind of pushing up into the northern parts and the introduction of the Northern Alliance. There's some changes to Vanguard in terms of options you can play with now in campaigns. There's food to feed your warband, and the ability between games to go out and find food and supplies, which starts to make you think about sort of having a pool of units and bringing more to and sending others off to do things between matches. It's quite cool. They've added things like weather effects as we push into the frozen north. But one thing to bear in mind is this might be focusing on Ice and Iron, but having a look at this, and so one of my friends plays a Empire of Dust army. Instead of a thick snowstorm, why not have a sandstorm? This doesn't have to be set in the north, so use a little bit of inspiration and change it around. The campaigns, there's I think 12 new campaigns in this as well, and they've started to introduce campaign flow for having multiple players all playing at the same time, and 2-player and 3-player and 4-player campaigns. Big focus obviously on the newer factions, so you've got lots of the snow trolls and your clansmen in the imagery, and a little bit more story, lots and lots of story pops up. New scenarios that come into it are for large and small, so they've got new hooks to go into Kings of War. So when you win, or the outcome of a Vanguard scenario can affect the next Kings of War game you play. We love doing this. Things like Capture the Giant from the original book is great. And then you've got ones that convey advantages when you win to do with deployment. And what's lovely about the Vanguard stuff is it's all really skirmish focused. It really feels like you are doing a skirmish offside of a larger battle that's ongoing. Black Ice and Tunnel Fight, these are very interesting ones. Black Ice is kind of like the old Power Stone scenario, with the added effect of your characters slide across the board if you don't take time to dig them in away from the Power Stones. And you also start sort of the same edge of the board as each other, but opposites. You're kind of racing up against one another and fighting and sliding all over the place. It's a pretty weird one. Tunnel Fight is great. Again, this is going to make you think about what you take, because it starts to remove things like charge bonuses from cavalry and harder to shoot because you're in a tunnel. It's dark. You can't really see what's going on. And then, yes, so we're looking at different game sizes and how to modify these scenarios for different game sizes. Breakthrough for a nice small game. This is a really nice introductory scenario if you're introducing your friends or first time you play. Maybe look at Breakthrough. Meteorite storms, so running around collecting randomly appearing meteorites landing everywhere. Rules for multiplayer games, and the King of the Hill. So if you go to your games hall, play with your friends, you've got maybe a small spare army, because Vanguard armies are just, they're warbands. They're like 5 to 10, 15 units maybe, depending on what team you play. Very easy to have spare ones sitting around. It's a way to introduce multiple players into the game as well. Or your mate hasn't turned up, so you've got one left over. You can start to introduce them this way. Nice to have official rules for that. So the updated warbands, I'm not sure for a lot of them what's changed, but certain models have been added, moved around. The points have changed in cost for some of them. For myself, at the moment, Vanguard-wise, only playing Northern Alliance and Goblins. I haven't seen a huge amount of changes at all. There's special ability tweaks, I believe, to a couple. But with this one, you have everything in here that Mantic sort of officially supports, if you like. So there aren't, there's Twilight Kin, Redoria, Brotherhood, Kingdoms of Men, Varangar, the Herd, you've got the Ratkin, all in here, which is really nice. For the larger game, the V3, you'd normally need the supplement Uncharted Empires to get the up-to-date rules for. So Ice and Iron contains all of those rules in one, so you don't have to get a second supplement, which is really cool. And it's going to allow you to have a little look at, for example, let's look at the Ratkin. If you play Dead Zone, or if you're a GW player, you've probably got enough to put together a little warband. So Ratkin Warriors, Tunnel Slaves, What else we got as a warrior? Shock Trooper as a warrior. Those 3 guys, you need 4 or 5 of those. Most people have got those. You could even use a Blood Bowl team of rats, and then you can have a couple of large rats for brutes, war chiefs, and scariers. It's quite cool what you can do. But yeah, that's the whole Ice and Iron supplement and how that's going to sort of add to your current Kings of War games.